Hello and welcome to the Fully Charged Plus podcast. Now, we were very lucky to get a very early sneak peek at the very impressive Kia EV6 recently, and so I was extra pleased to get the chance to talk to David Hilbert, who is Marketing Director at Kia. Now, we had time to get into the long grass about how a company like Kia is transitioning from being a combustion engine car manufacturer to a purely electric car manufacturer. But before we dive in, here's a word from our lovely sponsor, who we are seriously grateful to for making this podcast possible. My Energy is putting the I back into British innovation. My Energy is putting the I back into inventing the future. My Energy is putting the I back into inspiring a nation. Recharging the world with green, smart energy. Charge your EV with your PV and more. Visit myenergy.com and help to spark the green revolution. My Energy, driving the charge to a greener future. And now, without fanfare or hoopla, let's get on with this fabulous episode. Please welcome to the Fully Charged Plus podcast, David Hilbert, Marketing Director at Kia. So David, I mean, for a start, thank you, because, thank you for taking the time to talk to us. I'm really interested to start off our conversation with your experience, because you've been right in the thick of it for the last sort of 20 years, that you've seen an incredible change in the automotive industry, and particularly in the last 10. I mean, it has been really fascinating, because you were at Toyota before Kia.
Correct. Yeah. Well, First of all, Robert, thank you very much for having me on your show. Really excited to be able to share some of our plans and, of course, our fantastic new model that's just about to be launched, the EV6.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, I've been in the industry for actually 17 years now. So I started at Toyota in 2004. Did a number of roles in kind of purchasing, sales, and marketing, and product in particular, which has always been quite close to my heart. And like you say, there's been rapid change in terms of technology regarding vehicles. And of course, in the last few years, in terms of electric vehicles, a huge step forward in terms of their capabilities.
Yeah.
At Kia, we look at, we call it, there's an acronym we use, which is MECA, which is mobility services, electrification, connected car, and autonomous driving. And I think it's those four areas that the industry has seen a huge step forward in capabilities, and obviously electrification being a big part of that, has seen rapid growth in kind of things like the vehicle range, charging capabilities, etc. So yes, it's a really exciting time to be in the car industry.
Yeah, because I think every now and then I do sort of reflect on that if you'd joined the car industry and say that I'm just a random date, 1965, and you worked in it for 20 years to 1985, to be honest, very little changed in that time. I mean, it was different styling was the thing. And I mean, there were some technologies that were introduced, anti-lock brakes and catalytic converter, all those things, but basically they were the same machines. And what we've seen in the last 10 years in particular is this real big transition, which is fascinating. And Kia absolutely, I think this is so important to underline, the journey that Kia have been on. For a start, I just want to talk about the e-Niro. I can't help it because it's such an amazing car. And I haven't met anyone who's got an e-Niro that goes, yeah, we're not really happy with it. They just go, they're frothing at the mouth. They're raving about them.
Yeah, I joined in 2016, just as we launched the Niro Hybrid.
Right.
And part of the reason why I joined Kia was the exciting product plans we had, basically. And then hot on the heels of the hybrid came the plug-in hybrid, and of course now the e-Niro. And like you say, it's been a phenomenal success for us. Obviously winning the What Car of the Year award as well when it first got launched was a huge accolade for it. And really, it's kind of gone from strength to strength. And we have this new kind of mid to long-term growth strategy called Plan S. And at the heart of that is this rollout of more electrified products and EVs. We're talking 11 EV models by 2026, of which 7 are on a dedicated platform. and the 4 on derived platforms. And when I say derived, that's like the Niro, where it's got it's got other powertrains as well, so hybrid and plug-in hybrid. So yeah, so before e-Niro, we obviously had Soul EV as well.
Soul, yes, I did.
Yeah, which has been a great success, and a kind of kind of started the journey for electric cars for Kia. But the real game changer, as you mentioned, was e-Niro, because having that 282-mile range, just made electric vehicle motoring so much more viable for so many more people.
Yeah, no, it is. And I mean, that's the thing, when the ranges of cars, it's a bone of contention for me, because I always think manufacturers should say what you can really get out of a car. Well, I know from experience, you can really drive 282 miles. You could probably, with a bit of care in the summer, get much further than that, but you can definitely do that. And that's sorry, just waving goodbye to my son. That is that's the critical thing about that car, is that it does what it says on the tin, which is an annoying phrase, but it is relevant to that one. But what I'm intrigued as to how big a challenge that the transition from combustion to electric is for a company like Kia. I mean, because it is in a sense, it's a very different technology that you're having to do with, and it does feel like Kia and Hyundai, have got a hold of it a lot better than a lot of other companies that we don't need to mention.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're right. It's huge sums of money in terms of research and development, in terms of getting the technology viable and the right quality to be able to sell it. But then once you've built the product, and once you've got the product available to sell, it's then how you communicate it effectively, how you train your dealers as well, how you then educate and transfer knowledge to customers. Obviously all the great work you guys are doing, and the fully charged team, to really get electric vehicles, customers more aware of the capabilities of them is really key, because some people have that fear factor of range anxiety and, what about the infrastructure? But those things are really advancing at a rate of knots at the moment. And I think just by the fact that you can do the extended range now of, close to 300 miles. In fact, our new cars on the dedicated E-GMP platform, which is the heart of the EV6 that we're about to launch, that gives you even greater range. I mean, those cars are going to be over 300 miles range. So that just makes it so much more of a viable option for so many more people. But like I say, it's a journey. You've got to take people with you. You've got to make sure people understand the technology, get people in the car to test drive the car. Test driving the car is still really important. To experience how to drive an EV, because there is a different sensation when you drive EVs versus internal combustion engines, isn't there?
Absolutely.
Instant torque delivery, catches some people out sometimes. They're like, wow, didn't realize how exciting they could be. So test drives are really key. And we've just embarked on what we're calling the Electric Experience Dealer Roadshow, which is showcasing our new Kia EV6, which is this brand new electric car on this dedicated platform. Has amazing performance in terms of, like I say, range over 300 miles, charging capability. You can do 10 to 80% in 18 minutes on an ultra rapid charging charging port. So, and you can get 60 miles range in 4.5 minutes.
That's amazing when you realize that, because that's one of the things I think is a really critically important change in electric vehicles that I think generally is just unknown, is how fast that technology is developed. Because even now I will get messages from people or hear people say, oh, but I haven't got 5 hours to wait to charge my car. And you go, well, nor have I. I mean, nor has anyone. No one's expecting you to do that. Try 14 minutes, because often if you stop at motorways, you're on particularly in the UK, I think it's we're in that sense unique. You can't drive 1,000 miles in one direction in the UK because you're going to be in the sea.
When's the last time you've driven, over say 100 miles? I mean, it's been certainly since the pandemic. It's a long time since I last drove over 100 miles. My daily commute into the office is 12 miles each way.
Right.
So
it's very common,
and that's right. There are lots of commutes. I think that the vast majority of them are under 40 miles, aren't they?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So, a lot of people will do things like home charging. I think about my own personal situation. My parents live in Bristol. I live in Guildford. I could drive all the way to Bristol and back to Guildford
without
what to worry. 282 miles, that I can get that on one charge.
Yes.
So having 300 miles range is just it's a real game changer now for electric cars.
And what it actually means in day-to-day usage is you charge your car once a week for 90% of the time, and you're not having to think about it all the time. When I first had electric cars 11 years ago, every day was a nightmare. Oh my God, can I get home? And as soon as I get home, I've got to plug it in because it's got, and that was a car with 50, 60 miles range in the very early days.
That's it.
And now that's just out the window. I don't even think about it. The problem I've had recently is I've forgotten to plug the car in because I do it so rarely. Then I do need to go a bit further. I'm going down, but that's just my own bad organization. But then, so I mean, can you tell us anything about the plans? How I suppose it's more that how the e-GMP platform facilitates other vehicles, because I mean I've seen the EV6 and it is a stunning car, and there's a lot of little individual detail features I just love. The charge port, I love the charge port. That won me over.
Camouflage charge port at the back.
Very cleverly done, and just really lovely features like that. But then we're seeing that car now 99.9% finished. That's what the production car is going to be like. It's what's coming after that I'm always intrigued with, is in terms of scale and size. I mean, one of the things I would love to know is if there are smaller electric cars coming, because they do they're not all huge, but they do tend to be big. They feel big to me.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, the electric global modular platform, or e-GMP as we call it, as I say, it's a dedicated electric platform. And what does that mean? Well, it means that we can unlock the full potential that you can get from a battery electric vehicle, because it's only been designed for that one purpose, and forgetting about the internal combustion engine. And there's kind of three key elements that it gives you greater flexibility on, and that's design, driving dynamics, and performance. So when we talk about design, of course you don't have to have the big internal combustion engine at the front of the car, so you can then also put the wheels at the corners of the chassis. That creates more flexibility in terms of the cabin space and kind of those elements and functionality. Driving dynamics, again, because the wheels are positioned on the corners and the battery is on the base chassis, it gives that lower center of gravity, and therefore you get better driving dynamics. And of course, because it's specifically built for electric vehicles, the platform, you get that performance as well from it. So that's what it can really unlock. And the EV6 is the first of our Kias to be on that new platform.
Right.
And we've confirmed we will have 7 dedicated EVs, 4 derived. So 7 of those are on this platform. So they will cover a wide spectrum of segments, from smaller cars to larger cars, versus the EV6. Of course, I can't disclose the finer detail, but it's fair to say that we are looking at where the opportunities are and where we believe customer demand will be. And we've got some really exciting plans in the future to roll out more cars on this platform. And like I say, it establishes new benchmarks for us in terms of vehicle range, charging performance, and driving dynamics. And that's what's going to be really exciting.
But I suppose that's the thing to explain to listeners, is that the kind of the underlying guts of the car is essentially, I mean, it's often referred to as a skateboard, but it's kind of flat, a flat battery pack. But then presumably you can make that either longer and bigger or shorter, and so depending on you'd have less battery energy capacity if you make it smaller. But you could make a smaller car with the same system. You don't have to completely redesign it from the ground up.
Exactly that. So therefore, having that common modular platform where you can extend or make it smaller gives you greater economies of scale, and therefore you can work to make sure that you've got competitive pricing as well, because that's been always a bit of a barrier for EVs as well, hasn't it, versus internal combustion engines. And I think you're seeing that across the industry now, that everyone is starting to make them more accessible moving forward. And I'll say, the EV6 is one of the largest, well, obviously in terms of the naming convention, EV6, we've got the other vehicles coming that will range from EV1, I suppose, all the way to EV7 potentially.
Oh, I see. Oh, I didn't understand that. Okay, so there could be Yeah, I know you're not saying this, but there could be something akin to an EV1 or 2, which is considerably smaller. Right, yeah. I'm with you. I didn't. Yes, that is very interesting because that's the other thing I think is fascinating is all the old kind of car naming and engine power measurement systems we're all used to, the 1.6 or the 2.5 or the 3. That's just what do we say now? It's got, we often go by battery capacity, which is very peculiar. I drive the 75 kilowatt hour.
That's it. And you touch on a really important point here because it's everyone's used to things like CC engine size and brake horsepower. It is different terminology for electric vehicles, and with that, you need to explain it more. So this is what we're training our dealers on, so they can then effectively explain it to the customer. Because there is an element of the fear of the unknown. So when people get more familiar with it, then they become more accepting of it. So that's what we're working really hard to ensure that we communicate effectively, whether it be on our website, on our social channels, content. Working with you guys just to make sure that people understand the technology and what's capable from battery electric vehicles.
Yeah. So I mean, because we've been filming the EV6 a lot in the last few weeks, and it is a clearly a pivotal car. As soon as it was one of those moments where I think you may have sent us some images of them, which you can't. That's the thing I've come to learn. I get a lot of that sent to me. And then you go, well, where's the actual car? And you go, oh, it doesn't quite look like that. And then we saw an image of the EV6 and I went, well, that looks nice. I'll be interested to do it. And then it was just this moment. I walked around the corner of the studio it was in. I went, oh my God, it actually looks like that. It actually looks like the image. And it's it's a really impressive car to see. I mean, it's going to knock people out. But what is it? I mean, are there aspects of it that have particularly sort of excited you, of what, I just think it's going to sell very well. But I mean,
well, first and foremost, people buy cars with their eyes, don't they? They want the car to look, impressive. And I think the first time, like you say, the first time you see EV6, you can't help but think, wow, that's a really impressive looking car. So, the design language is a kind of an evolution of what we've had in the past. So before we had this kind of tiger nose grille as the kind of common design language for Kia. It's now evolving slightly, but it's still got kind of aspects of that from the front. It's got this kind of crossover inspired silhouette. We know how well crossovers, SUVs are doing at the moment in the automotive industry. So we've got that kind of crossover inspired silhouette. So design is a particular highlight of the EV6. But of course, as I mentioned before, the technology in terms of the battery technology is just incredible. To think that you can charge it from 10 to 80% in 18 minutes on an ultra rapid charging, 800 volt charging capabilities. When you think about it, you can charge this car as quick as your mobile phone pretty much. And that is pretty eye-opening. And then on top of that, you've got this new technology, which we call vehicle to load capability. So in the boot, you've got this little adapter. You can plug it into the charging port, and you can actually use the EV6 as a mobile power pack. Yeah. So for those that have got the great outdoors that they like to experience, you can charge your e-bike, you could charge your drone, you could even use the EV6 as a power source if you went camping. Yeah. And I think the stats are you can basically watch a 50-inch LCD TV for something like 24 hours using the EV6.
Using the battery.
Yeah, so you can even charge another electric vehicle.
That is extraordinary, I think. Yes, because I mean,
that would probably take a bit of time.
It would be a very slow charge, but the fact that the fact that that's possible, it just opens. But there's so many variables and things you could use that for. As soon as you realise that it's that easy, and that what I love about that is the simplicity. It isn't you need an advanced degree in electronics to understand. You plug a thing in. You open the side of it, you put a British domestic plug, just an ordinary 3-pin plug, whop it in there, and you've got power. You don't have to do any, so there's no other settings you need to do in the car. That will automatically just feed into it.
Correct. You just got to press a button and then it basically just, starts charging whatever you want to charge.
Yeah, no, that is very impressive. I think that is an absolute sign of things to come, because I think we're going to be seeing bi-directional charging as a kind of standard thing in cars. It makes so much sense, doesn't it?
And I suppose the one other thing I shouldn't forget is the fact that we've got a GT version coming out next year in 2022, which is our performance version of EV6. So you're talking 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds, 165 miles an hour type car. So it's a proper adrenaline kind of vehicle for you.
Yeah, because it is hard to, that's become sort of almost, it hasn't become mundane, but the fact that a car that could do 0 to 60 in around 3 seconds you were talking in the 500,000 to £2 million bracket for, a supercar that was made of carbon, handmade of carbon fiber, all those things. Those are the sort of car. This is a Kia, which is, I think it is a remarkable step forward. I mean, that is extraordinary.
And it's an accessible Kia as well. It starts from £40,895. And to get that level of technology, which is on par with the likes of a Porsche Taycan, an Audi e-tron, that's the same type of technology. It's a very accessible, high performance vehicle.
Yeah, no, it is amazing. Because the version that we've seen, that was it.
So the one that you saw,
what does that start at?
So the one that you saw in Walton was a GT Line S, I believe, which is kind of in the late 40s. It starts from.
Right.
So we've got a kind of 4-grade strategy. So we've got the entry, which is the EV6 Air, and then you've got a GT Line, a GT Line S, and then the GT variant is coming next year.
Right.
Got availability in 2 and all-wheel drive on some of the variants as well. So obviously that impacts slightly on the vehicle range. So obviously all-wheel drive is slightly less range. I think just under 300 miles.
Right.
But the 2-wheel drive, I think we're targeting around about 315 miles range. We're waiting for the official figures to come.
Right. That's great. No, that is brilliant. So I mean, so that is, I think, the other critically important thing is your dealership network, which I know I've had some other discussions with other people from Kia about that, but that is definitely something that it took me a while to understand the relationship between manufacturers and dealerships. Because I think as a general lay person, you go past a dealer or any car, you go past a big dealership and it's got the name of the brand of the car. And I assume in my ignorance that was because, Volkswagen, Renault, Kia, whoever own that company and own that. But then you realize, it's not quite that simple. It's a slightly more complex relationship. That they're often independent companies that are kind of
we've got 100 and I think just about around 190 dealerships in the UK. Right. We have one that we own, which is Kia Bolton, but the rest of the network are franchise partners. So we work very closely with them to ensure that we're trying to support customers the best we can, whether it be from a sales point of view or obviously after sales point of view, to keep our customers on the road. So we work very closely with them and make sure that they've got everything they need to be able to sell effectively to support the customers in terms of vehicle training, after sales support, etc., etc. So something that we're very proud of is our relationship with our dealer network, and we think it's going to be a vital part of the future for Kia. I think we're obviously seeing much more of a shift to kind of online. In terms of the customer journey, and we invest a lot of money in terms of the online journey with things like online chat. We're just about to launch online video consultation. But we still firmly believe in having dealerships out there for customers to go to experience the product for themselves, experience the new technology, but also have sales teams there to be able to explain it to them in the flesh, because there's a lot of new technology coming thick and fast. So I think it's really important that customers understand it and get to really understand the customer benefits and be able to use the technology effectively.
Yeah, because I mean, that's certainly been, anecdotal evidence I've had a lot of a sticking point for traditional car manufacturers to sell electric cars through dealerships, where there are some, and I've been to some of them, some dealerships that are incredibly positive about electric cars. They sell a hell of a lot of them. The owner of the company drives one, all those sort of things, huge success stories. There's other ones that are definitely at the other end of the spectrum who think they're rubbish and they never sell them. Why don't you buy a diesel and don't be silly? Electric cars don't work. The anecdotal evidence around that area is complicated. So that is, I guess, why it's so important, that your dealership network understands. I think it's a lack of understanding 9 times out of 10 of,
Right.
and if you're going into a dealership and the person you're buying the car from doesn't really get it, you're really on a, on a sticky wicket.
Correct. You're on the back foot. And that's, like I say, we're doing this EV6 electric experience roadshow. So we're taking 2 EV6 pre-production vehicles. So we've flown in 2 pre-production vehicles from Korea, specifically ahead of launch to support this this event. And it's split into 2 parts. So the EV6 goes to the dealership in the morning. It's completely devoted to training the teams there.
Right.
So they get to experience the product. They get to understand the new features. And then in the afternoon, we have 3 sessions. So 3 groups of customers or VIP customers who all being kind of booked in because of, making sure that we handle and being respectful in terms of numbers and capacity in the current restrictions in place. After 19th of July, that becomes a bit easier for us all. But yeah, in the afternoon, and then there's a product reveal and a demonstration of the vehicle to those customers. Right. So we've had a really, really good response. Lots of people have put their names down for these events. In fact, a lot of people have gone even further. In fact, we're about 1,000 EV6 orders already.
Wow!
And no one's actually
no one's actually seen the car. It's amazing.
Right. So that's pretty much our entire year's 2021 allocation, because this car doesn't officially go on sale until October this year.
Right.
So we're quite far in advance of the launch, and it's great to be able to do this. Get the car out there, even though it's a pre-production vehicle. We've spent a bit of time making sure it looks fantastic because it's not final production. Right. To be able to do that with 2 cars and to support our network and to give customers that, give them the taste of what it, of what it can, what it looks like, the quality of the car is really exciting. And in fact, today at the Goodwood Festival of Speed, we've actually got an EV6 there as part of their new electric Avenue enclosure. Right.
Wow, that's gonna get some attention. Because I've been holding back. I've had a very busy day. I haven't looked at any news from Goodwood. I know we'll see some later. But I think that's such a very sensible plan from the company's point of view to kind of preempt the sort of negativity, if you like. I mean, because I find it confusing, but there are elements in our wider culture who are sort of, it's almost politically opposed to electric cars, and you just think they're wrong, and I just can't, I really don't get that, because either you kind of want one or you don't. It doesn't bother me one way or the other, but I think it's vitally important that at least the dealerships genuinely understand, that it's because it's not all positive. It is more hassle to charge an electric car than it is to go to a petrol station and fill it up. But you can easily explain why there's some aspects. I never stand next to an electric car holding the charger in position, which is what all press people want to take a photograph of you holding that like you're filling a petrol car. You never do that. You plug it in, you walk away, you do something more interesting. You don't stand there waiting for it, do you? But I mean, that's such an important educational process. Yeah. And because in a sense, the salespeople are on the front line of that, when they're going to get customers coming who've never had an electric car, know nothing about them.
And we're constantly thinking about, customer innovations. How can we help support customers who take that ownership experience of an EV? So we've just recently launched a Kia Charge, which is to do with the public charging network. So obviously, a lot of the public charging network, there's multiple apps that you have to use and download, and profiles, etc. And different payment methods. We've basically brought a number of charge point operators under one umbrella, and we've now branded it Kia Charge. So we have a card that you can get, which allows you to use about 80% of the UK charging network. And what does that mean? It's it's an RFID card, so you just have that one card. You don't have to worry about multiple apps, profiles. To use a large part of the network. It's got a single itemized bill every month as well. So it's these little things that we're trying to make it easier for customers to adopt an electric vehicle. And then we've got our involvement with Ionity as well, which is the ultra rapid charging network across the whole of Europe. And there's a number of these stations in the UK already, and that network is where you can have that real high speed charging. And in fact, every EV6 that we're selling this year has 1 year's free subscription to the Ionity network. Right. Which means you can charge the EV6 for about, I think it's about 13 to 14 pounds, will give you 220 miles of range from an Ionity ultra rapid charging facility.
Right. Which is, yes, if you compare that to even a super tiny, super economic petrol car, it's still, you know, and that in a sense, using those chargers is, you know, for people who've never driven an electric car, that's about the most expensive way of charging your car. I mean, it costs you more than it would at home, even on peak time electricity, you know, but it's the convenience of it and the reliability of it. I mean, I think those two things, when people understand that, you know, you drive to where there's a rapid charger, you know it works and you know it's easy to access, that removes, you know, range anxiety. I dispute anyway, but you know, that removes any last amounts of it, because that's all you want. You don't want any special treatment. Just let me plug in, happy to pay for it, make it work, make sure it's working. You know, that's the pressure we have to put on those. But I mean, it is all the differences of electric cars, I think, are fascinating. But well, I mean, one of them is so at the moment, could you do the whole process online? Could you buy an EV6 online, have it delivered to your house on the back of a truck? Or at the moment, are you still going? I mean, I think you've explained this to me, that you would still go through the dealers eventually.
Yeah, I mean, when we launched the EV6 earlier this year, we had a pre-reservation period, which was you put £100 down, and it gave you the opportunity to be part of an exclusive number of customers who had a window to order the car in the first few days before it was open to the rest of the general public. So we handled transactions for the pre-reservation fee online, but then after that, it was then moving to kind of the dealership journey and getting customers into the dealerships to kind of convert those pre-reservations into orders. But these are things that we're looking at. You know, how do we facilitate the online journey and make it easier? As I mentioned, online chat is something that we've recently launched, and we're looking at online video consultation, where you can have a product walk around and therefore do it remotely from the comfort of your home. But what we're finding is many customers then want to have the test drive. So they'll go into a dealership to see the car, spend some quality time with the car, and then hopefully, purchase the car off the back of it. But of course, there are some other customers that want to do more of the online journey. And, we've got a car configurator online and all the usual things. So, you can specify your car. You can do finance quotes online on the website as well. So it's a kind of combination of online and offline at the moment, the journey.
Because I think that's the other thing I always want to remind people when the price of a car is, is announced, and they go, "Oh gosh, I'd love one of those, but they're too expensive." I think I always want to say to them, you don't have to buy it. There are other alternatives. You can lease it. I mean, I do actually own one car, which is a very old Nissan Leaf, but I lease my other car. I wouldn't dream of, and I can't see myself ever buying another new car. Are you finding that are most of your sales now leases and long-term leases?
We have, PCPs is a large part of our sales mix. So we have a large finance penetration, and particularly when you go to smaller cars as well. People buy it on a monthly budget as opposed to outright. And there's, and a lot of manufacturers, including ourselves, have really, good accessible finance offers in terms of APR and things like finance deposit allowances. And of course, when you buy a car on a PCP, you're not fully funding the vehicle. You're funding it up to the kind of GFE, or guaranteed future value. Right. So that also increases the accessibility. And then at the end of your generally 3-year agreement, you've got some options. Then you can either hand the car back, you can purchase it outright, or if you've got equity in the vehicle, you can buy another car from us. Right. And we find that's a really good way of car ownership, having that kind of 2 to 3 year cycle. Yeah. And of course, Kias have 7-year warranty, so we do have people that extend beyond that. Right. But yeah, we find that majority of probably about 70% of our sales, new car sales, from a retail perspective, are on finance.
Yeah. I mean, it is, because I think it's that thing where, I think some people assume that, you know, there's no other way of saying it. People like me that have occasionally been on the telly just have money to burn. And we just walk into a car showroom and go, I'll have that one. How much is it? 60 grand. I don't care. I want it. You know, no way have I ever been in a position. You know, a car is the second most expensive thing we buy after houses. And you don't buy a house for cash.
Correct.
You know, or unless you're very wealthy. But I mean,
and that's exactly why I was saying we still believe the dealer network has a huge.
Well, that's where their role comes in a big way, doesn't it? Yeah. Exactly,
because you want to experience the product and have that test drive and understand the vehicle and how it drives and what the quality of the interior is like. So to be able to do that, you've got to go and experience the product yourself. So that's why we believe dealerships have a vital role to play in the future.
Because I mean, I think that this is why I find your products really optimistic and hopeful, because they're, you know, I mean, they're in terms of the world that we live in of you know, electric car obsessives. There's one company that just takes a huge lion's share of the PR, which is Tesla, and I mean, I absolutely will not denigrate Tesla. Tesla are an incredible company that have, in a sense, single-handedly shifted the entire automotive industry into a slightly different, into no gears, you know, where they don't need gears. But I would argue strongly. And then I think in terms of European and Japanese companies, Nissan, Renault, definitely in there early. But what sort of Kia just sort of emerged, you know, when I first drove the Soul, I went, oh, this is, you know, and then the e-Niro, and you go, oh, these are really good. You know, that was the first time I took, because I don't want to talk about any other brands, but there's been some other brands that have done electric cars, and they're fine. They're fine, but you know, they don't knock your socks off. Whereas you know, every single one, and when I saw the EV6, you just go, this is really special. And it does feel like, I mean, I think we'll mention Hyundai as well, but Kia and Hyundai, it's very interesting how I feel they're 2 or 3 years ahead of most other established brands, and in some cases 10 years ahead. And I would say Tesla are sort of 3 or 4 years ahead of everyone in terms of their charging network and their software and all that stuff. Is kind of, it's annoying. I find Tesla annoying in a way. It's so like Apple and Windows 15 years ago. You know, if you're in that walled garden of Apple elitism, then your stuff worked and it was all marvelous. But the PCs gave you a lot more freedom and blah, 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 all those arguments, which are so silly, you know, I never really bought into them. But there is an element of that with Tesla, that they're like Apple in that sense. You can, you know, no one else can use the superchargers and all that stuff. But I mean, without question, Kia and Hyundai are, I don't know, I can't think of a comparative PC manufacturer that was really successful and made good PCs. I don't know, Hewlett-Packard, but, you know, really, really close, you know, and catching up. I think that's the thing.
Yeah, and look, you know, in terms of Kia, we're now a very well-established mainstream brand in the UK. We're 5% market share now in the UK this year. You know, if you look at the growth over the last 3 decades, because we're a young company, you know, we've only been in the UK for 30 years. To put that into perspective, you know, Toyota have been in the UK for circa 60 years.
Yes.
You know, Vauxhall over 100 years. So we are actually a real newcomer to the UK automotive market. But you look at the volume evolution. In fact, I saw this the other day. The first decade, we sold 56,000 cars. The second decade, we sold 340,000 cars. In the last decade, we've sold over 800,000 cars. Wow. So the exponential growth is being staggering. And that was a big reason, you know, why I joined Kia, was to see the ambition that was there. And the investment in terms of new technology and obviously electrification being at the forefront of that. And it's just gone from strength to strength. And this investment in this new dedicated platform is going to really unlock the potential like you can achieve through battery electric vehicles. And and it's not just electrification. You know, autonomous driving technology that's coming through. I mean, a lot of Kias have already got level 2 autonomous driving capabilities, and in the not too distant future, level 3 will be coming, which is your kind of your autopilot kind of functionality in vehicles. And then you've got connected services as well, connectivity. So our new Kias that are coming, and EV6 included, have what we call over-the-air updates.
Right.
So you can have downloads where you can update your navigation system, you can unlock certain apps, etc. And then in the future, there'll be potentially feature-on-demand services where you can just unlock over the air.
Right.
So that capability is it's coming thick and fast. And I think Kia and Hyundai Group had that foresight to think ahead, because they could see the internal combustion engine was on a downward trend, and all the legislation coming in, which has meant that people have had to shift to EVs because of emissions and things like that. And I suppose the big barrier to entry for the industry has been the knowledge and expertise in internal combustion engines.
Yeah.
But then when you move to electric vehicles, that barrier almost gets removed, because there's a lot of electronics, companies out there that could start to then evolve and diversify into vehicle manufacturing. So that's why we invested a lot of money to get to where we are, to make sure that we were, arguably at the forefront of the kind of the revolution into kind of electric vehicles.
Yeah. And I mean, that's presumably hugely valuable for you to have a lot of electric vehicles on the road already. I mean, the e-Niros, I don't know what the global sales are, but I know they've been impressive, and rightly so. But I mean, that presumably that data is very valuable to you, because you can then go, oh, I see. So the batteries do actually last this long. That motor has done 150,000 miles and it hasn't worn out.
Yeah.
That's just that base. Because I mean, 10 years ago, no one had a clue. When people said, how long will the batteries last? There wasn't really anyone could tell you, because that technology hadn't existed, for more than a couple of years. No one, we now know. So presumably that feedback is very useful when you're then developing a new, like the new platform that you're working on now.
Yeah, and you look, last year, when you look at our vehicle sales, 3 in 10 of our vehicles were what we call kind of eco vehicles. So that's hybrid, plug-in hybrid, and EV. Yeah. About a third of those were EVs. There's this, as part of Plan S, the objective is to sell around about 1.6 million eco vehicles annually by 2030, which is about 40% of the mix.
Right.
By 2030, where we're already at 30% in the UK. In fact, next year we're planning to be at about 50% of our sales being EV, PHEV or HEV.
Right.
But a big part of that growth is going to be fueled by EV6,
pure electric,
pure electrics. E-Niro, we're probably going to do around 10,000 of those this year.
Right.
Sole EV continues, and there'll be future EVs coming. Like I say, we're 7 dedicated to the EVs by 2026. So you're talking pretty much a new EV every year from now to then.
Yeah, that's an important point as well. I did mean to mention that you are still manufacturing and selling the Soul and the e-Niro. So they're not being withdrawn now that the EV6 has come up, right?
Not at all. No, they're really important to us. The Niro family is really important. And that's it's our second best selling car, the Niro family, now, behind the Sportage.
Right.
And then Soul EV is a bit more niche. It's obviously a bit more funky in terms of the design language. So it's not everyone's to everyone's taste, but we still have a good. We still do approximately 1,000 or so of those a year as well.
Right. Because you do see. Yeah, I mean, I always have a smile when I see one. I love it. I mean, it is very, very sort of optimistic vision of what's to come. I think that is really good. I mean, and I suppose that last thing I wanted to talk about is just how that you see that transition continuing. I mean, do Kia assume that at some point in the future they will just stop making combustion engines altogether and you will be 100% electric, or is that too far in the future to picture at the moment?
I think it's coming thick and fast, isn't it? I mean, look at the government's stance in terms of the road to zero. The fact that they brought forward the dates from, I think it was 2040 to 2035, now 2030. Of course, there's a transitional period in there as well in terms of.
It's only sales of new cars, isn't it? It's not actually banning anything.
Yeah. So it's sales of new cars, but there's also a transition in terms of cars that have zero emission capability. What's the definition of zero emission capability? Some would argue, obviously, plug-in hybrid vehicles and some hybrids have that ability for a certain point of time, but nowhere near as long as a battery electric vehicle. I mean, we are gearing up for a future which is without internal combustion engines ultimately. What's beyond battery electric vehicles? Well, you've got hydrogen fuel cell, and the group has got investment in that technology. Right. Of course, the biggest barrier there is still the infrastructure. We talk about EVs having an infrastructure that's still developing. Well, hydrogen fuel cell is a long way behind that. But that there's investment in R&D for that kind of technology. Obviously, the group have had them on the road as well in the UK in the past. But with battery electric vehicle technology moving forward so quickly in terms of vehicle range, it just makes it a much more viable option now for so many more people.
Yeah. Well, I would imagine that the battery technology and in terms of energy density, size, weight that you would have had in the very first, first electric cars that Kia produced, the Soul EV. If you compare that to what you've got in the EV6, even in that time, which is 5 or 6 years, 7 years maybe. That's something I've really noticed because I was going, electric cars don't seem to be getting that much cheaper. Then someone sensible pointed out, but the first one you bought had 24 kilowatt hour battery. Yeah. They've now got a 70 or 80 kilowatt hour battery and they cost less, not even more than that. Yeah. So that has really, the batteries capacities have got much bigger and the batteries have got small, lighter and more energy dense, haven't they? Yeah.
That's it. They're getting, like you say, they're getting smaller, lighter. They can store more energy, and that just makes it easier.
Well, and also, as you pointed out earlier on, which is a very important point, charge faster.
And charge faster. Yeah. It's a really exciting time to be in the car industry.
Yeah. But then in terms of recycling, because that's a big topic that I sometimes forget, but I know is happening. So the Kia batteries in 10, 15 years time, have you worked into any part of the process of your manufacturing that you can recycle those batteries or in partnership with people who can?
Yeah, I mean, of course, we take end of vehicle life really, really seriously. And, in terms of we're always looking at ways to improve our sustainability. Obviously, these factories producing lots of vehicles, it's important that we focused on where we can be more efficient and how we are responsible in terms of our disposal of vehicles and their parts and their components. So that is something that is constantly developing and looking at ways to make sure that we can recycle our products as best we can, and find ways to reutilize the parts. So that's something it's ongoing. We're not fully there yet, if I'm honest, but a lot of focus is on those areas.
Well, I mean, that's one of the 2 times we've talked to companies that are recycling batteries now. One of their problems is there aren't any batteries to recycle. They've actually got the equipment to do it, and the batteries are lasting longer than anyone predicted. I mean, from the most optimistic to the most pessimistic. So, I think you've got a gap. You've got a bit of time before you need to ramp that up. But that's
it's important that we start planning these things now.
Exactly. No, absolutely. No. Well, that is amazing, Dave. Thank you so much for that. Real insight into what Kia is doing. And I mean, it's very exciting for us to see the new vehicles coming out and to see the EV6. It is a bit of a special number. And by the time people hear this, that it will have been revealed to the general public and it will have been on fully charged. We've had a good look at it. It is very impressive. And I think we are having a drive-in one fairly soon. So that's very exciting. So I think Jack Scarlett's going to be test driving it at some point when there's one in the country that we can use. But that's been really great, and thank you very much. And I mean, good luck with it all. I hope it's a huge success. I've got a sneaking feeling it will be.
Thank you very much for having me, and obviously, thank you for supporting electric motoring as well.
Thank you. It's definitely been our pleasure. Well, I really hope you enjoyed that. I think it's very interesting to see Kia in particular in this episode, but also every car brand, big car brand, really making huge leaps now, really getting properly serious, not making token electric cars just to placate a few city or national governments. They're doing it. They are making electric cars because they can see that they're actually better machines. Anyway, that's all. Well, there's going to be another beautiful podcast next week, of course, and all those weeks following it. I'd like to thank our wonderful sponsors, My Energy. I'd like to suggest that you could possibly encourage your friends and family to listen to the Fully Charged Show podcast, if that's appropriate. Please do subscribe to the Fully Charged Show podcast, because that would be really cool, either on YouTube or on your favourite podcast download application. That's all really. I mean, you can have a look at the Patreon link if you want. No pressure to do that whatsoever, but obviously some people have done and are wonderful, and we really, really appreciate their support. But that's it, as always. If you have been, thank you for listening.